Hey, good evening. My name is Michael Nelson. I'm a California attorney. I have an accounting background history, and things that come up during the day that I wish other people knew, or problems that I encounter each day, I'd like to share a lot of those with you. And it's now heading in the evening hour, about 9 o'clock at night, and there was a case that came to mind that I thought you may all be interested in, for those of you in California or those of you who have relocated outside of California. Recently, our Governor Newsom has indicated that with the additional 200 laws passed and other burdens on the state, revenue is an important reach for their budgeting, balancing, and so they're looking at how can they bring in more revenue. Now, they've already indicated that with the increased tax and filing obligations, many of the high-tech companies and high-tech executives will be leaving the state of California or have already left. And so the question then for the state seems to be, how can we reach those people and tax them even though they're outside the state? And an important case just recently came up, the Bindley case. I have it here. It's 9 pages, and it's Blair versus Bindley. Blair S. Bindley. Now, this case is an important case for people who are thinking of leaving California or have already left. And it shows the long arm of the state as well as the long memory of the state. Now, generally, when I have clients who are looking at leaving the state permanently, there's a laundry list of factors they need to do to make sure they have left the state. Because you have two prongs. One is residency. Have you left residency of California? Well, you do that by establishing residency in another jurisdiction. It can be another state of the United States, possession territory, or another country. But then the question comes, have you changed your domiciliary? So residency and domiciliary are quite different. So although you think you're residing, let's say that you've moved to Arizona, and you think that you have now successfully changed your residence, it doesn't mean you've changed your domiciliary, which of course then subjects you to California tax as a non-resident, but you still have to file tax returns for California on California source income, which the Bindley case puts a completely new curve and slant on this. But in order to change your residency, I tell my clients there's a laundry list of things they have to do. And I'll go through this in the next video. But it's things like, if your residence must change, if you keep your house here and you decide it's going to be a second home, I think you have problems. If you decide you're going to rent that home, much better. Like an Airbnb type situation. Are you having it managed here, or are you coming back to manage the house? These are deciding factors. Plus, you're looking at the entire family moving, going to a new school, registering to vote in the new jurisdiction, new driver's licenses, titling cars in that jurisdiction, changing bank accounts. You'll be looking at hiring different doctors, as I said, different schools, different sports activities, different credit cards, different bank accounts. All these things you'll want to be looking at changing in order to show that you have cut ties, almost surgically cut ties with the state of California. But for a lot of people, even all of this may not be enough. And this is where the Bindley case, it's only a 9-page case, comes in. That is so important. Now, this case came down May 30th, 2019. It was the Office of Tax Appeals. Now, tax appeals means that this has already been subject to an audit. The audit showed a negative conclusion to the taxpayer. In this case, it's the taxpayer is going to be Mr. Bindley, and the taxpayer is then called the appellant because he's appealing the determination of the Franchise Tax Board. And he has retained the services of Timothy J. Duvall, who's a CPA. Now, you might think it's odd that a CPA is practicing in a court of law. There are various types of examinations that CPAs can take. I think the highest type of examination would qualify the CPA to practice before a federal tax court. That's quite an accomplishment. Very few people accomplish that, but I know of a few, only a few, and they're quite bright. The respondent, in other words, for the state of California, was Myra Patel, tax counsel. So you know that she is an attorney. And the other person for the Office of Tax Appeals is Andrea Long, again, tax counsel and an attorney. You need to be careful. I'll get into these things if you like. Let me know in terms of attorney-client privilege, confidentiality, and so forth. That may not be shared with a CPA that an attorney would have. Anyway, I'll go into the particulars of this later, but it involved Mr. Bindley, who was a resident of Arizona. And he decided that he would take two jobs for two Hollywood LLCs, and he would write two screenplays. One screenplay, he got around $25,000. The other screenplay, $17,000. And those LLCs in California reported the income to Mr. Bindley by issuing a Form 1099 MISC, miscellaneous income. And it would show his address, and it would show the LLC's address. And this information is reported to the IRS as it's filed from the two LLCs. But the IRS also has a sharing agreement with all 50 states, territories, and possessions. And these sharing agreements, you might as well think of like nighttime. Over the night skies goes all this information to all the different taxing states to look at and compare. And California has its own, as you can see here, it has its own tax code, which doesn't always agree with the federal tax code. We are a very large state, and so we have a lot of courts, and in this case, we're looking at a federal tax court appeals. So in this, they determined that although his services were performed in Arizona, and allegedly, I'll read more, he never came to California, did all of his work in Arizona, but was paid from California. The state of California determines that that income is California source and he should pay tax. And that's the most recent holding in the Bindley case. Now, you would think, like I do a lot of international tax work, you would think there'd be some kind of treaty between countries where you're not paying two different taxes on the same stream of income. And we do have those treaties, not for all states. And California, you would think, would have treaties with other states, but there's no such thing on a state level. So if this were to continue to stay where it is, then Mr. Bindley would owe taxes to California. And then you would say, okay, he's already paid tax in Arizona, so he could use the Arizona tax to offset the California tax. And that doesn't work for California. We don't accept other states as a credit. Now, maybe the other way around, you could have California tax being used as a credit against Arizona. That's possible, but this case arose more than 3 years ago, so I'm sure Mr. Bindley is barred from using his California tax to offset his Arizona tax, unless they did some type of protective filing, which they probably did not. So this is an important case. It just came down. I don't think much has been said about it, but for California and people who have left or will be leaving or even doing work with California LLCs, you need to be very careful. Federal government says that you're taxed on where the income is earned, not where it's paid, not who pays it. It's where your services, you perform those services. Where did you perform those? That is the jurisdiction to be taxed. But this is a complete 180 by the state of California. And I will be coming out with more of my thoughts on this. So, as usual, I am an attorney. I'm not giving you legal advice. If you have questions or would like to talk to me about this or retain my services, I'm quite happy to do that and see what can be done to protect where you currently are. Retroactive protection is going to be very difficult. But I do get involved in asset protection, estate planning, and tax. And that's my 3 areas. I think it's like Clint Eastwood said, you have to know your limitations, and 3 areas is my limitation. But I'm very good at it. So I wish you a good evening. Any questions that I said, let me know, and I'm happy to address them. Okay. Good night for now.